Do you know the meaning of thirsty?
Yeah, we know the meaning of thirsty.
Is that a slang that means more than just wanting to quench?
Yes.
Quenching your thirst in other ways.
Oh, okay.
You know? Have you also owed Lee Kuan Yew $200,000? This is your daily catch-up. So guys, as you can see, right, we don't have just one, but we have two guests with us on today's episode. We have Dr. Chee Soon Juan and Jade Rasif.
Yay.
Welcome, guys.
Welcome.
So we're very lucky enough to have Jade earlier on. So we already had an episode focused on her. So today we're going to focus a little bit more on Dr. Chee. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
No worries.
Maybe I can give you all some context on why I invited Jade to be here. She once told me that Dr. Chee had a book signing and she went for...
I did.
Yeah.
I went down for your... Well, he was distributing books and meeting people. It was like a walkabout, community walkabout at I think Bukit Batok, because that's where he was contesting that year.
Yes.
And I came to get a signed copy of the book.
You went down specifically for that you happened to be around?
You know, he doesn't tell you where... Okay, you don't tell people where you're going to be. You just say, I'm around Bukit Batok.
It's a bit
and I had to go...
It's like Uncle Raymond.
It is, yeah. It's like looking for Uncle Raymond. I had to go like coffee shop to coffee shop. He'll be like,
Yes.
I'm at coffee shop at block 3, and then like we drive down to block 3, and then we're like, where's Chee Soon Juan? And like, where's doctor?
I think it was during the election campaign at that time.
Yes,
we
it
just
was.
go flitting from one coffee shop to another.
It's like a treasure hunt.
Like some people didn't know what was going on because obviously it's just a coffee shop. So you have to go like table to table like, did this man come here? Did you see this man? Where is he?
Like looking for everyone.
Like missing.
And then we'll check the Facebook Live, and he'll be like, I'm at this coffee shop now, and then we'll be like, okay, we gotta go, and then we like ran. But we finally found him, and he was really nice, signed our books.
So what interested you to want to get a book signed?
I just like I enjoy the way that you always stick to this internal value system, and it's consistent and it's in the face of a lot of criticism and a lot of pressure. So I like how consistent you have been on, let's say, 3778. It's been something that you've been talking about since 2006. For example, the hijab issue is something you've been talking about since 2008. And I mean, we are seeing a lot of these policies that you're pushing for originally come to fruition now. And I don't know if you feel vindicated. I don't know if you feel a bit annoyed, resentful, because when he first brought them up, he faced a lot of pushback. I think for one of the, he might have been jailed. I think in another case it might have cost SDP an election. I don't know.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know Dr. Chee as well as Jade does,
okay.
Yeah, Dr. Chee, do you mind just quickly like just introducing yourself to the young people of the interwebs and also what you're best known for, perhaps?
Well, I got into politics, I think, even before some of you guys were born. So that's a long time already, and I've just been at it for quite some time. And previously, as my previous life, I was lecturing at the National University of Singapore. Then I don't know what possessed me and got me into opposition, and then thereafter things just kind of went downhill from there as far as my career was concerned. But in terms of just bringing things up, issues and fighting for the rights of Singaporeans, it has its moments. It's been very gratifying in that sense, despite everything that's happened in between. So I've just got to put it very euphemistically, a very storied life, I suppose.
Indeed. Earlier, before we actually started filming, I heard like JP kind of asking you like if you've been on podcasts, and like actually I just found out that even though we've been doing a podcast for almost 2 years, you're one of the OG podcasters in Singapore. You had a podcast called Atypical Singaporean as early as 2005, if I'm not wrong.
I barely remember something, but you got to understand. I kind of straddled between the two eras, the ones before social media existed, and that was just barren. It was this desert. Like there was nothing like this that you could actually get on social media. Then came about circa, I think 2016, right? Or is it? I'm sorry, I got that wrong. Maybe 2005 or something, when YouTube, Facebook all started coming about.
Right.
And that was an explosion of social media, and then podcasts came about. So that's the two situations that I've been in.
So if we take it back a little bit, right? Like since you were a lecturer, right? Then what kind of sparked your interest in getting to like politics?
Like that involved in politics?
Yeah, like was there a specific issue?
Yeah, I suppose when I was in my late teens, and that was just pre-NS days. I don't know if you remember, but they wanted to come up with this, PAP wanted to come up with this policy called the Mother's Graduate Scheme, where women who were intelligent, they were encouraged to have more children. And women who were not intelligent, you
Less
stop at 2.
educated.
Yeah, and they were given a lot of pressure to make sure that you don't reproduce and so on. And the way they defined intelligence was whether you had a university degree or not. Okay. And at that time, I just found it absolutely repugnant. This kind of social engineering. So I brought it up. I wanted to speak up about it. In fact, then I written a letter to the Straits Times. And at that time, we still could use pseudonyms. So Straits Times called me back and said, just want to confirm your identity and show who you are.
Yeah.
And I got cold feet and I hung up.
Oh.
So the letter never got published. And then, but it just riled me up tremendously. I just remember trying to bring it on different forums. And then after that, I left for the US to do my degree and so on and so forth. And then when I came back, that feeling still hadn't left me. And I just felt that, there was just no space for us to have conversations like this.
Yeah.
Right? You know that human behavior is complex. Society is complex. There cannot be one answer that fits everything, right? So I just felt that we needed debate, we needed discussion, we needed dialogue, but it wasn't forthcoming at all. So, decided to throw my hand in the ring and just joined the opposition. And the rest, they say, is history.
You said about joining opposition, there were a lot of parties at that time, but what specifically about this SDP that made you want to join?
I guess at that time, it's not like the present where you've got, a myriad of parties to pick and choose from. At that time, there were very few. And then you got to remember at that time, PAP was at its height of very autocratic kind of rule, and you just don't step out of line. So, look, it was few and far in between the parties. So at that time, I just saw some of the principles that the Singapore Democratic Party advocated, and that appealed to me. And for better or for worse, that I just got into it and then decided to, make the best of it.
So you talked about very briefly about your storied political career. What do you think were maybe some iconic moments of your past, if you were to
You just call him iconic.
I would call the moments iconic.
Yeah, iconic.
Yeah. There was a note here that had a photo of you that said,
oh my god. Iconic, yes.
Iconic.
You're right, iconic.
I don't know. During that time, I suppose it was a period where, as I said, unlike right now, you just couldn't get in edgewise, a word in edgewise in terms of, you were at the mercy of not just the ruling party, but the media as well. Yeah. And I just remember at that time I had gone to, I just felt we needed a breakthrough in terms of our ability to gather together, as citizens, and be able to speak freely. So I went down to Raffles Place, and I just picked up small little portable mics and put it in front, and then just got myself.
This was before Hong Lim.
That's right. That's correct.
I thought you were going to start busking.
I would have preferred to do that actually, but given my limited talent, I think I better stick to just the speaking instead of doing anything else. But in any case, I just put the speaker over there and started talking, and I was very, very nervous at that time. Not because I was going to speak in public, but I was just afraid that nobody would turn up, right? Show up.
How old were you at that time?
I guess that was about 20 years ago, so I was in my 40s.
Oh, okay.
There's no way to even announce that that's happening.
No, there was something, at that time, the best thing that we had was the fax machine, if you know what that is, right?
What's that?
Yeah.
And there was teletext as well. You just put it out, and things were just...
Oh, I didn't know you could put things up teletext.
Teletext at that time, it existed.
It's a 40
no, it wasn't.
Yeah.
You could not put it up, but I think once
all black screen with coloured text.
And on TV,
on
you
TV.
could just turn it on to that channel and you could see text coming up.
Yeah. Check for
So, I just made an announcement. I just said I was going down there, and again, reach was very limited. But very soon, a crowd built up. And I just started talking to them about public housing, about taxes and so on, about our freedoms to be able to express ourselves as citizens enshrined in our constitution, no less. But of course, then in a few minutes, the police came, just gave me a warning, and then I announced that next week, the following week, the same time, same place, I was going to be back. And again, the police came, and then thereafter I was charged.
They stopped you under what?
Under the Public Entertainment License Act.
So
But
you
you're
could
not
have
intimidated.
buzzed,
But it was
Would have
not.
been this-
Yeah,
If you started singing, it'll be okay.
Uncle
but the thing is that
Iman.
yes. If I had started singing, probably they would have been softer on me. But so after that, they prosecuted me for. But you see, that's the whole idea. You see, I keep saying the same thing over. What is legal is not always right. What is illegal is not always wrong. And I just wanted Singaporeans to think through some of these issues and why is it important for us in a democracy that we aspire to, not just in between elections where we go to the voting booth and cast up, but in between. Those are freedoms and rights that we as citizens have should exercise. You see? And this is where I'm saying, and that's another side of society that we must aspire to, and not just be just so enthralled with making money and then having the paychecks come in. That's all important, I understand.
Yep.
But there's something which we must aspire to a high level of existence, isn't it? I mean, I don't want to get all philosophical. Really, I think there's something that human beings, we just don't eat and have a roof over our heads. We aspire to be something.
Would you say then, I mean, after taking in what you mentioned, right, would you say then one of your objectives for entering politics and then thereafter entering opposition was not so much to take over government, but you just wanted to have debate? You wanted discourse?
At that time, our politics was so rudimentary, was so unformed, right? It's almost like you've got to fight for your rights first before you can even aspire to. Because what's the point? You wait for every 4 or 5 years, and then the government comes in and puts in all sorts of rules and saying you cannot say this, you cannot say that, or you're not allowed to say this here and there. And after a while, you see, people going to the voting booth is just so meaningless, right? They're uninformed, and they don't know what the issues are all about, and then they feel very nervous, they feel very intimidated. So when you go in there, is that you have elections now? But I remember in Iraq, Saddam Hussein, right? If you remember him, when he had give people elections, he won 90% or 98% of the vote or something like that. So you've got to be questioning. There are elections, and then there are elections.
Right.
They're different now.
I think just carrying on from John's question, right? Because I think some people believe that in order to enact some change, and you already have this strong ruling party, that if you get elected, then at least you can be in parliament, you can actually enact some of that change. Did it ever cross your mind to actually join the ruling party and enact change from within?
Believe it or not, I was actually invited to join the Young PAP when I was at NUS at that time. And actually, at some point, I joined the RC. What was it? The Residence Committee.
Leaders,
But trying to see if you could, effect change from there, and then you find yourself. By the time you actually get into that whole system, you've got to be able to wake up and look yourself in the mirror and say, I haven't changed. I've changed the system. But it's not always that easy. By the time to work your way into, the rank and file over there and be able to rise up along change, to be effective, right, and advocate change, you must be careful that you don't get transformed yourself.
Yeah.
I guess you could always advocate for change, but when it comes down to voting, you're still bound by the party whip. So you don't actually have much, you can't actually make a statement that affects people who are watching. Let them know where your values are. I think there are politicians in the PAP right now who don't 100% believe in what they have to vote for by party whip, but I do think that they do try to affect change from the inside.
And they do bring it up in the debates lah.
Yeah, and they do bring it out in the debates. You do see that.
Yeah, because I think it was quite interesting. Many people brought up, say, Jamus, for example, right? Dr. Jamus.
For you.
Dr. Jamus.
Excuse me, Dr. Jamus. A lot of them mentioned, oh wow, he looks like a typical PAP candidate, but he actually joined opposition. But what a lot of people may have forgotten was that you were one, there was a lot of interest when you joined the opposition because you were one of the first graduate from a local university to actually stand against the PAP. What was that climate kind of like?
unlike now, it was very difficult. It was intimidating, and I knew that some of my colleagues in the department were taking bets to see how when I'll get the boot.
Oh wow.
So it was that predictable. You just didn't do it at that time. It was just, and you're talking about early 1990s.
Okay.
So the political climate at that time was still very different from what you have now already. You know, when you talk about the two eras, I would say really it's a stark difference.
Yeah, because I was curious to know, like, did you feel very alone at that point of time? Or were there any particular individuals that were together with you in this?
You know, at that time, even at that, I just remember also, you know, even my department colleagues, you know, they give you a very wide berth when they, you know, later when they found out. And, you know, you just didn't go out and do a live chat on Facebook because it didn't exist at that time.
Yeah.
So my only recourse was to either, you know, write in our party newspaper or publish books. And even then, for example, Jade, when you were there, it was tremendously difficult. People like you wouldn't have just come up and say, would you sign my book? I remember it was just Center Point. At that time, it was the place, the hangout for youngsters. It gives you an idea how long that was ago, right?
It's not bad now, okay? They renovated recently.
But at that time, you know, Orchard Central didn't exist. It was just a car park over there.
Phoenix Hotel opposite.
Yes, and it was, you know, so I stood at outside the Center Point there. It was just hawking my book. And a couple of people would come out and buy it from me. But then most of the people would see it and then just either just ignore you or they just walk and then stop and then they'll go the other side of that.
But as they do it, direct selling may not be the politics also.
By that time, there was no online selling at that time. You know,
The only thing is direct selling.
Yeah, they just sell insurance or what.
Like when you sold fire
extinguisher, but they open the door. So
But
I mean,
is that just social media, or do you think that is because now, because of the kind of almost crazy politics and political stability that we did enjoy back in the 90s, that we are at a position where we are wealthy enough to dare to dream? Because it's very hard to dream when you're still thinking about, do I have a roof over my head? Do you have food on my table?
I think it's a perhaps maybe a mixture of two. But I would say predominantly it was because the ability to communicate with each other and not feel that, you know, my views and my thoughts are, you know, just in the minority. Right. But when you're able to get on social platforms and say, hey, you know, you don't view things so differently from I do, and then you can start having chats here and there and find yourself, hey, I may not be in that small minority, and then, you know, people can coalesce around ideas and views and so on and so forth. And then they tend to just become just a little bit more emboldened. Right. Not in terms of just airing your views, but also in the way you vote. So that social media, I wouldn't downplay it. It made a tremendous impact.
Have you seen yourself evolve? Like, because now we have like ministers starting like TikTok accounts and things like that. Have you seen yourself like evolved your, like, I mean, through the years, like in terms of how you
communicate your message?
Yeah.
You have to. In this day and age, you just got to, I don't know.
Do you like hate yourself or when you?
You know what I mean? But short of me doing cartwheels and jigs and dancing and so on and so forth.
I feel sorry for them also. You know what? I don't want to also, you know.
I saw a really nice, I thought it was adorable, by the way. I liked it. It was a TikTok of you, and I think it was a Doja Cat song. It was so good.
Do you make it yourself?
You know the one that goes like,
why don't
you know that?
John is not
no?
that hit.
No, but you know, but I'm on TikTok.
Yeah. No, he did a TikTok. It was with you and Paul.
Was that
it was like who is gonna go into parliament, and it's like ding, and then it's like, it was so good. I liked it so fast.
You see, some of my younger members, they come out to say, why don't you just do this?
Yeah.
So I don't know what is going to come out
you don't know the
in
final
the end.
product?
Yes.
Right.
So you just do this and then you just
go and watch it.
No, but can you imagine
It's so good.
from getting a speaker to speaking out in public to now doing weird TikTok dances like in the span of 30 years?
I don't know where we're going with this though, to be honest.
No, but
we're
it's
going back,
it's not just that. You guys, you need to be on Bayam King's.
Yeah.
You need to be on Bayam King's TikTok. That is the aunties in the comments. They are thirsty.
They're thirsty.
He did one where he was changing in the backseat
wait, hang
of
on.
a taxi.
Somebody asked me, do you know the meaning of thirsty?
Yeah, we know the
Is
meaning
that
of thirsty.
a slang that means more than just wanting to quench?
Yes.
Quenching your thirst in other ways.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Okay.
You want to guess?
I remember somebody told me that, but I've forgotten it already. I think it's
make a best guess based on the sentence that she's given you.
that they want to know more. I'm just trying to. Is that a wild shot at it?
Let's just say
you have protected your innocence. That's why it's good.
titillated. They were a lot of women were titillated in the
Right.
comments.
Okay. I got you now.
Titillated.
But I think there's from the outside looking in, and as someone who has listened to your old speeches, I would say one thing that I do notice is that you're a lot more tactful in the way that you say things, a lot more measured in the way that you say things. Would you agree or would you disagree? Are you more mellow, or do you make sure you're more measured, or are you just like, no, I'm the same?
I guess it's also the circumstances and you've been confronted with. Back then, I remember because we had conducted a protest outside Parliament, and we told them we were going to march from there to Orchard Road, and then they confronted us and they physically dragged us into the police cars and so on and so forth. So those kinds of
what a life you had, huh?
Yeah, wait, don't interrupt.
Yeah, sorry.
Dr. Chee.
No, but it's you're right. It's something very different right now, and now you can express yourself through social media, and so you tend to just. It's a different medium, right? And you want to make sure that you explain yourself as clearly so that once people get onto you and listen to what you say, what you have to say, that they want to hear more of it, and that you make sense to them. You see, so perhaps the way you communicate.
Like adding on to what Jade asked, right? Because I mean, even in that era, there have been many opposition politicians, right? Like Mr. Cham, and Mr. Loh, which have been around, but they didn't get the level of flack that you got. What do you think were maybe your key mistakes, or maybe you don't see them as mistakes, or what was?
Yeah, I've just felt that at that time, just talking about elections was just it didn't quite make sense. As I said, without the freedoms that came with speech, it came with assembly, you can all the elections you want. And it's not going to make a jot of difference, you see. So for me at that time, I just wanted to call for a reform of the political system, right? Yeah. You have your elections department, yes. But what did your elections department do? Till today, it's still subsumed under the Prime Minister's office. And the redrawing of boundaries and so on, it's just so little transparency to it, you see. And so for that, at that time, I remember that I said, we advocated for not just on these issues, which are important, I agree. But more than that, you've got to reform and look at the system that we were all laboring under.
Right.
So at that time, when the late J.B. Jeyaretnam was still around, we had worked together. But of course, that really attracted the ire of the late Lee Kuan Yew. And he wanted to close us down. And so, J.B. Jeyaretnam was also sued repeatedly, made a bankrupt. For me, I was prosecuted and jailed for even something like as simple as standing at Speaker's Corner and speaking on the hijab issue, on the Tudong issue. And it came up and they prosecuted me for speaking on religious issues. And I told them that I wasn't. I was just advocating for religious humanity and understanding in all sectors of society, but that fell on deaf ears.
Yeah. Right. It's very interesting because now it would, the headline is Dr. Chee speaking on religious issues, but I don't understand how it could have been seen as a crime when you were advocating for the right of a minority.
Yeah.
At no cost to the majority or to any other race. So it was very funny, but the truth is so buried down behind the headlines that is something that you don't see. So I guess that's one of the great things about being able to just switch on your camera and explaining to the people who support you and your stakeholders what really happened.
Speaking of like you were talking about being clamped down, going to jail, getting the fines, even being declared bankrupt, right? But you're also a family man. You're not just a politician. You have kids. You have a wife. Like, how does that go? Like, how do you explain to them that they're like, they see that their dad might get jailed or this history? Like, how do you go about explaining that?
I remember at that time, my kids I think you're just about the same age.
I know you mentioned that your daughter was the one who was like, oh yeah, that's the influencer.
And Lynn's about the same age as you guys, my eldest daughter. But I remember at that time when they had come to the court that went to prison to see me. And, but they couldn't understand what was going on. So they were jumping around. Hey, hi, Papa, and I was on the other side of the screen because it was monitored. And then a couple of times they came to court and I had appeared in court and I was in the jumpsuit and shackles in my ankles and my,
That's pretty hard.
Yeah. So, but I couldn't talk to them. So they saw me shuffle in. But, I think sometimes, you kids, just you know a lot more than parents give you credit for. So they knew and they didn't want to ask mom and say, So they kind of felt bad too. But I remember at that time, because we were being sued as well, and we were bankrupt and so on. And I just
while you were in jail.
Yes, all occurring. Yeah. I've forgotten the timeline. Some of them happened concurrently and so on and so forth. And I remember my Aunt Linda asked me, Papa, are we rich? And, I just didn't know how to answer, but she did want to say, are we poor? Right. Says, are we rich? And then because she sees people, driving cars and everything, and that time I remembered that I had just rented this old van just to go and sell our newspaper and so on. So, she couldn't stay at home alone. So my wife and her had just ridden with us. And it was just one of those rickety old little vans that she came up. And it took me aback. So I was just trying to figure out how to answer her. And I later collected myself and I said, we are rich. I am rich. And that's because we have you. And I don't measure wealth by just, the amount of money that you make at the end of the month or you have in your bank account. But I felt rich. And I wasn't lying to her. I just felt with everything that possessed, not materially, that may not have been a lot, but everything in terms of my experience, what I wanted to do for the country, what I wanted to do for the people, and what I could do potentially for them when they grew up, for them to inherit at least a society where they could just have a little bit less, a more democratic system where, something that they could feel belong to as a country, society. I thought that was all the wealth I possessed, and I think I answered her truthfully.
But that was not what she was asking, lah.
I guess, what I mean?
She misunderstood. It's like, oh shit, we're wealthy.
Yeah, I don't know whether she understood, but she certainly does now.
Okay.
Yeah, but your wife is a G. Honestly, I mean, a G is like a what? How do you describe a G?
Great,
like
Great,
your wife though.
Yeah.
For if my boyfriend was like, can you get in the car? We are going to be selling magazines in the back of a van.
Yeah.
Don't know many ladies.
Yeah, exactly.
Who'll be like, okay, jump in.
Has your endeavors affected your marriage, or maybe you have that question of I'm sorry if this is too much. Okay, you tell me if you
Yeah,
want
if
to
it's too much, don't
Yeah.
answer.
But
Maybe there's a better way to phrase it.
Has it gotten a point where you all have had a conversation on maybe you should stop pursuing this endeavor?
It has its trying moments. That is to be expected.
Yeah.
But it's something which I've, not just her, but everybody else, in society, even my mom, for example, it says, are you crazy? Why are you joining opposition when you've seen everything that could happen to oppositionists and so on and so. But if you thought this through, you know what you're pursuing is not something that brings society harm. I think people come around and see your point of view, but of course it takes that persuasion and that reasoning with them, and you've got to be clear-eyed about it. Don't go in muddle-headed and saying, with these fancy ideas that I want to be this, that one day, and then find that everything then really doesn't quite work out. But if as I said, you know what you want to pursue and accept that it's going to be a long, hard road, then it makes it easier, not just for yourself, but others to come on board as well.
Like, do you think your political career has affected your children's social life in any way? Like, perhaps their friends might think, oh, you are that person, because given the image again of like...
Why would it? Like, hello, he's a badass among our generation.
No, of course.
They'll be like, oh my
like,
God, your dad is Dr. Chee.
So the reason why I asked this is because I think like when we had Minister Chan Chun Sing on board, right? Like on the show, and then when we asked him like...
You're sitting right here.
Yeah, he was sitting on this
that's
seat.
because he's Chan Chun Sing.
And when we asked him like how has your kids been affected by your political career? And then he was just saying, oh yeah, sometimes his kids, friends would say, oh, my dad doesn't like you. or like, hey, your dad is this person, like this, you know. And so like, just want to see. I mean, I just want to ask like whether that's taken a toll on them, like anyway.
I don't think that is quite how they see things, but I think it's also more like, you know, human nature is such that when you're little kids, remember when you put a camera in front of you, guys would be, you know, dancing and just prancing around and just acting up in front of the camera, right? And you grow up, I don't know, maybe not you guys, because you guys are doing this podcast in different category, different level, but you know, you guys, you know, you want your privacy as well. You don't want to be says, hey, you know, I saw you on video on TV, that kind of thing. And so it's that kind of more than how nature takes, you know, when you guys grow up, you develop, you just want a bit more, you know, more self-conscious.
Yeah.
Right. So it's that kind of thing rather than, you know, them because of my involvement in politics that they don't want to be seen in public. I've dragged them onto stage. I think you saw a couple of pictures last
but
time.
definitely. I mean, what a flex, right? He got interviewed by Pretty Please. There was a podcast with New Narrative. Like, he meets all the cool people, like, you know.
It's true.
But I don't know, man. If I saw Chun Chun Sin, I'd be like, oh, okay. Like, oh, your dad's Chun Chun Sin. Cool. Cool.
Besides politics, you also started an F&B venture.
Oh, yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, congrats.
Thank you.
I've been there. It was good. The food was good.
Like, why? What was the sole purpose for you?
I guess that's a masochistic streak in me. It's not enough punishment.
Yeah.
You know, just take on some more. Come on. But I guess for me, well, you know, 10, 11 years ago, we actually talked about it within our party and wanted to start something like this. And the whole objective, the rationale behind it was that you open up a place like that, people can come together, right? And then you know how it is. When you're in a group, you talk about things, and then you end up talking some more, and before you know, you end up talking more than you do, isn't it? So after a few years, then you know, I said, you know, okay, like enough already. Then we just started first, and then let's see how it goes from there. But the idea is that, you know, how your pubs and cafes are places that can be places now where conversations start, and then you have this kind of development, you know, where your space to talk about, and that's how, you know, your Karl Marx's, your George Bernard Shaw's, Gloria Steinem's, all your philosophers and writers started from there. Even your J.K. Rowling, right? All this in incubation places where ideas incubate and they start coming up. So I don't know. That's the idealistic side of me, and I'm saying, why not? Right? And I've got to ask people to come to the SDP's office. Everybody starts getting really, you know. So if I go there, what do we do, right? I look at you, you look at me, and what else? Yeah. But if you come to the cafe, you sit, you talk. I saunter up. How are you? Is everything okay? We start talking, and we may talk about more issues, more serious issues, weighty issues. But then we get just a very nice conversation about your children, what's going on, sports and everything. But that's what I'm talking about, when people can come together and feel free that they can express their views and so on. And that's why, you know, the part of the whole, this Sunday we're going to have an event where we invite Seelan Pillay. I'm not sure, he's been to prison too for his activist work as well. And just we had another forum on censorship, but at the same time I've been able to organize, say, for example, string quartet, to ask them to come and play on a Sunday afternoon, and that was just wonderful.
You should totally document this. Like if you have a podcast, right, where whoever comes on the show at the cafe, they just meet different friends.
But I just want people to feel free, so that they may not feel that they want to be caught on camera. Yeah, I just wanted a free discussion, conversation.
But how's being an F&B owner?
Oh,
is it fun?
It's you hear everything that's gone on, right? And then you know, it's all intellectualized. Yeah, I know about it, but it's not until you do it yourself that you know. Yeah. Oh my goodness, you know, that's
harder than politics.
I think it was what's
good training,
his name? Anthony Bourdain. I think in his book he said, like, F&B is the worst industry. It's the hardest, it's the toughest, longest hours and smallest margins.
Yeah. Kitchen Confidential.
Kitchen. It was in Kitchen Confidential. Yeah. So I every time someone's like, I'm going in F&B, I'm like, why? But the duck confit
that
and the mash is so good.
Right.
And I gotta say, like, your duck confit and mash is like
Yeah.
Very yummy.
Business is good, right? I presume. I walked past a couple
Is
times.
it?
I wanted to
It's
go in, but it's full.
crowded,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, it has to go through stages. You've got to go through a stage where people come to know you. And the one thing that I know that I don't want to do, and that's take people that come in for granted, and they come in, okay, we support you. But if your food is not up there, the quality of food, quality of service, and it's not that we have not messed up, okay? But, I just want to make sure that we don't take people for granted when they come in. You want to give them the best for the money that they pay for. And that then kind of will establish you, and then we move on from there.
And you're expanding your operations, right?
You should.
I'm just trying to figure out where we're going right now. At any time of the day, I don't know whether I'm here or there. All I know is I'm just still standing and still smiling. And that's,
There's more than one outlet now, right?
Oh, you have more? I went to the one at Rochester.
Yes, there's a second one at Marina Square. So I
nice.
think that's where you
Okay.
Congrats.
Yeah, it's great. I heard that you have some social programs once in a while. You offer free meals to the elderly.
Yeah, and that's the other part of it that I also want to do. I mean, look, sometimes these people are just all invisible to us, right?
Yeah.
You know the cleaners in there. I know, because I see them before we open. They're outside mopping up the floor. And you go down to the refuse center where we, at the end of the day, I do this to my staff. You bring down your trash, and they're sitting there, and that place is not your Chanel number 5, whatever. You know what I mean? It's the odor is
Yes.
but they're sitting there, and they're all in the 60s, 70s, 80s already. But we don't see them, you see. And you ask them to go, they'll sit there with one piece of bread and they'll have it for lunch. But why should we go into a restaurant and enjoy the nice creature comforts of, a nice meal, and then they have to do what they're doing, toil and so on. So I decided to say, hey, look, I want them to experience, to serve them as well. So, a couple of, and we're doing again for this Christmas, I just wanted to bring our cardboard collectors, just bring them up for lunch one of these days and make sure that they see one side that they don't normally do.
You talk about the cafe as a place to engage and to have conversations. Anecdotally, as you're engaging with the patrons, do you feel like the cafe is attracting a wide range of people across the political spectrum, or do you feel it's mostly supporters? Okay.
Yes, I've had PAP members.
Oh,
Curious lah.
And let's just tell me that
Curious.
I'm a PAP member. You know what I mean?
Quietly.
But, yeah. They drop 1 decibel lower. I'm a PAP member. Then I told them, I'm not going to. I'll tell I'm not going to.
You want a discount? Is it? No way.
I'm not going to sneeze in your food now. Let's put it this way. And look, I said, anybody come. We may be of different political persuasions, but it doesn't mean that we have to be mortal enemies, right? Okay, we differ in our views. We come, we sit and talk. We may disagree, but can't we sit down and talk?
And that's the point almost.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I've extended my invitation to our PAP ministers to walk in. I'll be happy to serve them as well, you see. I know that Mr. Chan, you spoke with Mr. Chan Chun Sing, right?
We did.
He's a Minister for Education. His Ministry of MOE is just right next to it. And I said, come in anytime, drop in for a cup of coffee, and I'll make sure I serve you a nice cup of latte and sit and chat.
No, but I think that's great. I think sometimes we tend to be very polarized.
Yeah.
And it really does affect our ability to communicate civilly. I mean, I don't know if you guys watched the recent parliamentary debate between Grace Fu and Jamus, but I felt that there was a lot of hostility when there didn't actually need to be. So imagine if there was a way for us to civilly sit down and be like, okay, what shall we fix it as? Instead of I'm trying to win you, you're trying to win me, I'm trying to win you, I'm trying to win me.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like there is a let's try and understand each other and find a middle ground. It's I want to come and win this argument.
But my problem with it is I feel like politics seem to be designed that way all over the world. I vote PAP lah, huh? So when it comes down to it, and you also could see, oppositions always they do make good points, and of course they are looking out for marginalized parts of society, and I do see that. However, also we can also see from both sides that also there's that element of I need to win votes, right? I need to rile up, make them look stupid, make me seem like the more caring one. And this happens from all ends of the political spectrum. You mean you don't care about this? In which
that's true. That's very true.
Yeah, and where I feel like this then is the design of it, which how then at some point they sit down and let's say, I mean, the only way for this to work is for the ruling party to say, okay, let's just talk about this properly, right? But what I also feel is that, in all fairness, opposition parties will then take advantage of that to pull in votes because of the way this system is designed, unless this safe speech is
But
protected in
that's
some
what,
way.
as you said, what politics is all about now. But and
That's what we made it like.
cut and thrust of debate in Parliament. Sure, you go on at each other in terms of winning the argument, scoring points, and so on and so forth. That's okay.
Scoring points, yes.
But what I'm saying is, outside of Parliament, there's no necessity to destroy the person's life. And this is what I meant when I was going through it. When you're sued in the court of law and so on and so forth, it just affects your entire personal life, your family's life, and so on and so forth. And last time you had to go to prison and that kind of thing. And I just didn't feel that was necessary. That part, that component side of it, it's not something that was needed in a political, a democratic system.
Like, just for some details, I think you were sued to the point where I think like you owed Mr. Goh Chok Tong like $300,000, Mr. Lee Hsien Loong like $200,000, and then you had to go to jail. Was there any point in that time where you felt like I should just leave this all behind, or did it actually drive you even further to like continue this pursuit?
It just made me even more resolute.
Right.
That I just felt that I just walking away, it would meant that PAP wins, and a PAP wins is not that I lose, the people lose.
Right.
And that was what just drove me on. It's just, I will not leave this alone. And difficult as it was at that time, you just felt that, at some point, even if I didn't personally succeed, you would have then, it never comes back to zero. You would have just, gotten that level one up, and then somebody else that comes along, as much as you stand on the shoulders of those that came before you, then you lay the groundwork for others to come as well. And in future, I don't know, generations, if need be, then you get to that threshold where you just bring about meaningful change, enduring change. So that was the way that I saw things, and I just wanted to make sure that you leave a mark and build up for the next generation.
It's such a strange new world that for a very long time, the way that people would come after you is by attacking you financially, right? So they would sue you. If someone didn't like what you said, they would sue you into bankruptcy, and then you end up owing them a lot of money, and then you go to jail, and when you go to jail, then you can't run for elections. But now it's such a strange new world where you can easily pay it off with one crowdfunding campaign. So it's almost like that political tool that was utilized for so long has become a very blunt sword.
Right.
In fact, they can now call you down like what Lim Tin did, although I do not like him. I'm sorry, I don't like him. He can call...
You would like to come on this show, sir?
I won't be here. I won't be here. No, man, I will not be here. I'm sorry, John. We are friends, but not that close. But I mean, it's become a very blunt sword. He managed to crowdfund, and then the fact that he crowdfunds makes the news, and then the news becomes positive because it's like, look at this guy. He raised 300,000. Hero of the people, 100 days. And I'm like, shit. Quite a blunt sword. They're looking for new ways.
Before that, I remember it was just tremendously difficult. It's almost like a death knell. Politically, you
because even if you try to skirt, so I think what happened is someone made a police report against a certain minister, and someone went up and said, in front of me is I'm looking right now at a police report filed for this minister, and they won, and the minister won the defamation suit against them because even though it was technically true, there was a piece of paper. The implication that that minister was a criminal was enough to sue him into close to bankruptcy or oblivion, let's just say. I don't know the details.
Right. As you were going through that whole process of like jail and like bankruptcy and whatnot and getting sued, right? Like, was there like a very clear silver lining? Were there any clear silver linings for you going through that period?
Not that I could see at that point. It probably was there. Like, you just needed to persevere and just work through, and just know that, like good things, bad things come to an end as well. And I remember you when you said it, Jay, it was in 1997 when JB Jarayanam got sued, and it was like 13 minutes. 13 ministers actually got onto him.
Maybe it was someone else.
and it was Tang Liang Hong as well. Both of them all got into
Dropping more and more names.
It's just a
I didn't mention any names, just want
very
everyone to
brief
remember
history
this.
lesson, I suppose.
Yeah.
But those were very trying times. I just remember we got together and was trying to raise funds for them. But where do you go? Right? It's just not like you just put it out on social media and crowdfunding.
Literally
and people
asking friends and family.
Yeah, so I remember at that time that for all the travails that they had gone through and asking for trying to raise funds and money, you raise it talking in terms of hundreds of dollars. When you actually know that paying damages and your legal costs would amount to hundreds of thousands of
It
dollars.
was hundreds of thousands. I think the suit was for 100,000.
Yeah, it was just
right, or
tremendously
something like that.
difficult. Yeah,
It was crazy.
tremendously difficult.
So like maybe after all of that had already happened, right? Like on a personal level, like was there like the earliest like something that you felt was a win for you with whatever cause you were advocating for?
Yeah, and it didn't. Well, it was that time when I just made the decision not to cooperate, because the more you cooperated, the you were digging the hole deeper. They wanted you just to stay away from politics or political issues,
Right.
and so that because you needed to raise funds, and to raise funds, then you have to spend all your time raising the money and then paying them off, and then what next? They sue you again. So I made a very conscious decision not to cooperate. I said, you want to make me bankrupt? Fine. I'll remain a bankrupt. But I just won't cooperate. I'm not going to pay you. I don't have the money to pay you. So I'm not going to. But then, every quarter you have to produce your grocery bills and everything else to make sure that, you are a cooperative bankrupt. And that's the...
Yeah.
And so I decided that I wasn't going to. And so, I said, but then the one thing that you couldn't do is leave the country because you had to apply for permission and so on. I decided, fine, I won't leave. But then what about the conferences that wanted to? So they'll, then the technology came on and said we could do YouTube, And then they saw that I don't know whether they saw the futility of it or not. But then after that, I said, look, I'll going to pay you a very reduced amount. And that I think was to Lee Kuan Yew and Goh Chok Tong.
Yeah, 30,000, I believe.
Something of that amount. I forget the exact amount already. But in any case, then they said, okay, fine. So it was a small amount. I paid them. And then thereafter, I think there were a couple more lawsuits which came around and I didn't end up paying as well. So that time that came that social media and things started to change, so that the pushback was there. So what's the point right now, right, of them, trying to sue? Then you can very quickly, easily raise the funds on the media, and then it's not as onerous now as it was before.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this episode of Daily Ketchup Podcast. A massive thank you to Dr. Chee for joining us, and also Jade for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
If you like this episode, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Alright guys, so as you can see, right, we chala already.
So Dan has not hosted in a long time. Okay, just not care for everybody.
Thanks guys, thank you.